Greetings everyone, Jeremy Sutton from PrecisionPrinciple.com on day 20 of the intensive Ashtanga training. At this point in the course, we have gone through most of the philosophy, most of the anatomy, and now on this last stretch for 10 days, it's really primarily focused on getting into the practice, getting deep into each session. And on that note, I'd like to talk about a couple key items in a yoga practice. And that's got to be one, one's attitude towards a situation. Two, our state of mind, our state of physiology, our being when we enter into our practice. And ultimately three, something Viktor Frankl calls the ultimate, the last of human freedoms. All right. So today, for instance, we've been practicing in the same rooms every single day. And this morning there was a bit of a hitch. We had to move to another room, and this upset some people a little, some more than others, right? So we went to the other room, we started getting into the practice, more or less, some people less than more. But the point is this, that I noticed personally, when we first got into the room, how there was a certain tension about not being in the normal practice area, not having access to our normal supplies. We didn't have our, if you had your own mat, the mat was in the other room that we couldn't use. We had to use someone else's equipment or just the general studio's equipment. And there wasn't enough blocks for everyone, there's enough straps, blah, blah, blah. So the point is that people kind of had this tension on their mind, this sort of frustration, right? So we started the practice, and it's a Mysore Ashtanga style, which means that we're all going into this individually, and there are corrections in the room, but everyone is kind of on their own track. And immediately I could feel just tension in the room. I could feel other people's frustration. I had my own frustration as we started to get going. And then stepping to the front of the mat, kind of taking some deep breaths, getting prepared to start the practice. I felt the tension, and I thought to myself, wait a minute, what am I doing? Why am I feeling this tension? This is not going to help me do my practice with full efficiency, with full efficacy, and it's just not helping me. It's making me feel stressed and bad, and it makes me want to not be here. So I had to make a state change, right? I have to change an attitude change. So the first thing is attitude. How important is attitude? Well, Earl Nightingale, if you don't know who he is, he's a radio host, a writer, author from the generation past. I'm pretty sure he's passed away now. And he now has a audio series, pretty long one, 16 hours, called The Essence of Success, where people have gone through and have sort of coordinated, curated most of his most essential teachings, his most essential talks into a grand scheme that is the essence of success, so it's argued. And I think the very first point in that whole series is attitude. Attitude, attitude, attitude. And what is attitude? Attitude is the state of mind that we approach our practice. It's the state of mind that we approach whatever we do in life. I mean, if you look at the Stoic philosophy, and this is just a fact of life, that there are some things that are out of our control, and there are some things that are in our control, right? Stoic philosophers such as Epictetus say, don't focus on those things that are out of your control. Focus on those things that are within your control, right? And most importantly, Viktor Frankl, he was a psychologist or psychotherapist, psychiatrist, something along in this field, and he was essentially a Jewish psychologist who was taken into the Nazi concentration camps during World War II. In particular, he was sent straight to Auschwitz. And he survived World War II miraculously, sometimes on the positive ways that he behaved in the camp and the way that he navigated the situation, and more often, just out of blind luck, because he said at some point there was times when your legitimate chances of survival were less than 1 in 28. He said these are 1 in 28, 1 in 25. He said this is just a statistical fact looking back at the time, and there was nothing you could necessarily do about it at times. It was random passing, right? So in this situation, he had to suffer the most atrocious horrors that humanity has ever imagined. And what happened? Well, he noticed in the camp that there were different people would take this situation in different ways. And he ultimately came to this observation. And it's what's now called the last of human freedoms. The last of human freedoms is the ability to choose your attitude, your reaction to any situation, regardless of how terrible it is. So what that's saying is, if you look back to the Stoic analysis, there are things that are out of your control. You cannot do anything about it. So it's not worth it to worry about it. The one thing though, no matter how much is taken away from you, no matter how big this area of out of your influence is, and no matter how small your area of reaction is, it never disappears. There's always one thing that you have control of, that we have control of, and that's our reaction to a given situation. Of course, situations are going to influence us to think and feel a certain way. That being said, in a much less severe situation than a Nazi concentration camp, here we are back to the yoga practice this morning. And I'm just reading this book by Viktor Frankl. I picked it up recently and it's very moving, if you ask me. And kind of having this idea in my mind, putting it together with the Earl Nightingale's essence of success, how attitude is the first principle, right? And I was standing on my mat, getting ready to start, noticing this frustration, and I just thought to myself, what am I doing? Just calm down, relax. This practice is exactly the same. I'm going to get benefit from this right now. Vijay, the main trainer of this class, in the regular Ashtanga classes, he begins each session with a sort of, I don't know if I'd call it a prayer, but we maybe call it like an affirmation or a projection, a goal setting. And the first thing he says in this is, we sit there and he say, becoming a better human being. That's the very first line. To become a better human being. As in, I'm going to use this next 90-minute, 2-hour period to initiate this desired goal of becoming a better human being. Becoming more focused, stronger, more flexible, healthier, more present, right? And so I sat there at the front of the mat, and even though Vijay is not there for the Mysore style, I closed my eyes and I thought to myself, becoming a better person. And I felt this basically relief, just the frustration and stress sort of flowed out of me, and I felt calm again. I looked around the room and many people were just rushing through their practice, and I thought to myself, just slow down. What do I have to do today? I don't have anything except this practice. In fact, this is exactly what I'm here for. So stop trying to rush through it. Don't let frustration interfere with your practice. This is just an obstacle to progress, right? So come back to the present. Choose the attitude, because this is not a major inconvenience. This is simply a fact of life. We're in this other room. It's okay, so let's do it. So, got to work on the practice. And overall, it was a good day. It was a great practice. Because of the limitations of the room, there was several things that I wasn't able to do, but that's okay. Maybe it's a good thing, because parts of my body, such as the headstands, there weren't enough pads for the headstand, so the hard floor made it difficult, so I just skipped that. But maybe my back's been a little bit sore lately, so it's probably positive that I had a chance to take a break, right? It's all about the way you see it, the way you frame it, right? If you frame it positively, you're going to see things positively. This is basically, I hate to call it this, but the secret. We've all heard of the secret, and what's the essence of the secret? You focus on things, and things come to be the way that you imagined, so to speak. There is a major error that people associate with the secret, and sometimes it's talked about very esoterically, as if when I focus my thoughts on something, that is actually manipulating the external universe to conspire into my vision. But that's definitely not what's happening, right? What's more likely the case, and I do believe the secret works, but it just doesn't work the way that people have often explained it to work, right? How the secret actually works is in the way that it engages the reticular activating system, right? And basically what that means is that when we become aware of something, when something enters our awareness, then all of a sudden it starts to pass through the filter and it becomes something that's important to us, right? So let's rephrase that. Right now, there's approximately thousands, hundreds of thousands of stimuli coming in to you and me right now. Among those, 99.9% of them are being filtered out. For example, you might be able to notice right now how your left thumb feels, or the way that your feet feel on the ground, or the way that if you're sitting down, the way your seat feels on the chair, or if you think about it now, the way that you haven't probably been breathing mindfully. There we go. See, all these things are happening anyway. You probably find your heartbeat, you probably find all the colors around the room. The point is that hundreds and thousands of stimuli are coming in nonstop. So by definition, the brain has to mostly filter all that stuff out, right? It has to take most of it out, because if we let it all in, then we would be bombarded, we'd be inundated with so much information, we wouldn't be able to function. So the brain is filtering out a lot of stuff. And basically what happens is when we become aware of something, then we're saying to our brain, and specifically the RAS, reticular activating system, we're saying, hey, open up the filter and let these type of things through. So An example would be, a really common example is the exercise of looking around the room for a certain color. For example, you pause this video and you could look for all the colors red. And then you could find all the blue colors. You could pause it between these and find all the yellow colors. And the point is, as soon as you're looking for it, or green, or whatever color you want, as soon as you start to look for it, you'll find it everywhere. Because what you're saying is, hey, this is important information to let it pass through the filter, right? Same thing with the cocktail party effect. And that's essentially the fact that when we can be in a cocktail party or any social gathering, and there'll be maybe 50 people there, and conversations happening all around all at once, and you'll be talking to one person, and then you'll hear your name in the distance, boom, and then immediately, even though you didn't hear a single word that was being said for the last 2-3 hours from anywhere except your conversation, that one word will just shoot through the noise as something important. And that is because our name is important to us. It usually has significant information. When somebody calls our name, it usually means that our attention is required or is the least desired, and then it has significance for us. So our name happens to be one of the things that get through the reticular activating system quite easily. Another example are cars. People often get a car or get a new phone or get something, and the day they get that thing, all of those things start becoming visible in the world around us, right? So back to the secret. What does this have to do with the secret? Mostly it's this. When we choose to focus on something, or whether we don't choose to focus on something, but whatever we think about most commonly, these are the type of things that are going to come through the filter of the RAS. So if you're focusing on problems, then if you think, oh man, this sucks, look at how many terrible things there are today, by asking those kind of questions, look at all these terrible things, where are all the bad things? All of a sudden, your brain goes, oh, let me see, where are all the bad things? Oh, there's one. Oh, look, there's problems all over the place. This place sucks. Right? So that's kind of letting your brain, using the mechanisms of your brain that are going to work one way or the other in a way that's not good for you because you're focusing on the problems, right? This morning we could have been like, oh man, I can't use my yoga mat. There are not enough blocks here. There's no space to do my headstands. Oh my goodness, it's all terrible. Or just ask yourself a new question and redirect your attention. So for example, hey, what is nice about this room? What is good about this situation? Oh, it's good that I'm here to practice yoga, and I have an opportunity to practice with teachers who are really good. There are many people around me who are very good at yoga, and they're inspiring me to keep continuing my own practice. I someday would like to be as good as these people around me, so thank you, all of you, for being there, right? By asking these questions, we start to find the answers that we're looking for. So the point is that you got to ask yourself good questions. You got to direct your attention at the things that you really care about. And in particular, we're going to come back to state changes, right? When I first got to the practice, I felt frustrated. I was like, oh man, this sucks. Well, look at all these inconveniences. I was looking at the wrong thing. And then, looking around the room, I saw everyone else was really frustrated. And I felt that, hey, I'm frustrated too. And I could really see that. Sometimes it's easier to notice the ego, the kind of reactionary, emotional hijacking modes of other people. And when you notice that, then you go, oh, wait a minute. What does that mean about me? They're feeling frustrated. Now I think about it, I reflect on it, and now I'm feeling frustrated too, now that I realize it. So the point is I'm in a constricted, stressed out, agitated state. This is not a good place of mind to do yoga. In fact, it's the complete opposite, because it's got my mind, I'm thinking about everything in the room except what I should be focusing on, which is the yoga practice, which is what I'm here for, which is what I'm here to learn, right? So this puts me in a bad state of mind, unfocused, scattered, frustrated, tight, constricted, stressed. This is bad. So what happens? I need a state change. What is good about the situation? Why am I feeling so stressed? I'm here to practice yoga. Oh, yeah, nice. State change. Feeling relaxed. Feeling breath. Feeling the breath increase immediately, right? What happens? Now I feel good. Now I feel focused. Now I feel present. And then I can start the practice and have a great day, right? It's going to be a lot better by changing the focus. These strategies, these asking yourself questions, these types of noticing how my brain is currently affecting me, and then redirecting it to something that I care more about, or to something that is going to better suit me, or better suit my well-being in the future. These are all part of a larger skill set that psychologists call metacognition. Cognition is basically a fancy way of saying thinking, and meta means beyond thinking. And so metacognition is beyond thinking, but that's not entirely accurate, because what it really is better of thinking about is thinking about thinking, or just being able to take my awareness outside of the stream of thoughts that's kind of carrying me in the wrong direction. That is, if I'm in an emotional state and I'm feeling frustrated, my awareness, my sense of self is sort of inside those emotions. I'm attached to those emotions. I'm feeling those emotions and they're carrying me along so that my body's not just reacting. I am frustrated, right? So when I realize that, I might want to step onto the shore and let those stream of feelings and thoughts kind of wash by. Now, if I want to sort of redirect my attention, then I ask myself a question. All of this is metacognition because what it has to do with, I'm aware that my current state is like this. I'm aware that I don't want my current state to be like this, and so I use a strategy to alter my stream of thoughts. This is basically metacognition, thinking about thinking and then doing something about it, using strategies and tools to then try to change state so that I can be in a better situation, a better frame of mind, so that I can actually perform to my highest ability. And this works for any of us, and there are, in some sense, there are people who do this and people who don't do this. That is, there is Susan Gruder is a Harvard developmental psychologist, and she explains psychological development in 4 stages. And basically, the major distinction between the bottom 2 stages and the top 2 stages is metacognition, this ability to consider, to reflect back on one's thoughts and to be aware of my thoughts on a more regular basis. So this ability, it's not that some people can't do this. We can all do this. But for example, some people who tend to operate in a state of mind that it doesn't include metacognition will find these sort of exercises as sort of, oh, that's kind of funny. That's kind of I don't want to like, you know, I don't want to talk to myself. I don't want to be that kind of crazy person. Although, newsflash, we're all talking to ourselves all the time. If you don't have that running narrative in your mind, then you're like actually a Buddha, basically. And I don't know about your reality, but I look around the world and I'm not seeing too many of them. So the point is that it's good to get comfortable with this sort of self-awareness and this ability to redirect our thoughts. And on some scales, by, for example, Susan Gruder's developmental psychological model, she is actually suggesting that metacognition, this type of self-reflection and self-direction of one's attention, is actually a state of higher development in psychologically speaking, right? And she makes a pretty strong argument for that. I would highly recommend looking into more of her work if you have doubts about this topic. Meanwhile, on a more practical note, is that if we don't experiment with our mind and how it works and become aware of how it works, then we are basically entrenched in the ego, right? In some sense, you could look at those 4 levels of development that she puts, and she has that metacognition right there in the center. Well, in some sense, this isn't so different from the yogic model of kind of psychological development, or the yogic model of identification. Because if we think way back to like day 5 or something, there was the idea that basically there's at least 2 parts of my psyche, and we might call it 3 parts. It was divided into animal, man, and divinity. And what that means more practically is instinct, rationality, and intuition, right? So basically, using the rational part of the mind is more advanced than just being driven around by our instincts. And when I have internalized my reactions to the point of that they're just intuitive, that's even more advanced still, because then it doesn't require conscious thought. I've figured out how I want to react, and now I've practiced that so much that I've conditioned myself to be intuitive about reacting that way. More to the point, we see her division has metacognition that separates basically higher development from lower development, right? And in the yogic model, we have this 3 parts, and we don't even need to think about intuition right now, but just from our instincts to our intellect, right? What's the difference between these 2 things? Well, one is that in my instincts, if I'm identified with my instincts, identified with the ego, identified with the lower self, then basically what's happening is that I have stream of thoughts, I have emotional currents, and my identity is in that current. I'm just being swept around by my emotions. What Daniel Goleman, another Harvard psychologist, calls emotional intelligence, or in emotional intelligence, emotional hijacking. Sometimes it's called amygdala hijacking because the amygdala is part of the reptilian brain, the very core part of our brain, and it instantly reacts to stimuli, especially threats. We get fight or flight that happens from right in this spot. And so that is basically our instinctual, being led around by our instincts. When we kind of step out of that stream and use our intellect to sort of redirect our attention, this has a lot in common with Susan Gruder's using metacognition to be at a higher state of psychological development. So the point is that we can affect the way that we think. It seems obvious when stated like that, but the point is that most people don't use it, and If we do direct our attention in a way that's healthy, that a way that helps us, we're basically going to be more effective, more efficient, more compassionate, open-minded human beings. We're probably going to be less selfish because those emotional hijackings, those instinctual kind of animalistic urges tend to be self-serving. That's why the ego is considered the lower mind, why that instinctual mind is considered the lower self, whereas the higher self has more to do with being aware, being intelligent, open-minded, being not being led around by selfish interest, and maybe even living life in a way that considers a bigger picture. So that is what we got for today. Attitudes, state changes, metacognition, and ultimately just helping move ourselves in a direction that is going to make us better, stronger, happier, more loving, more compassionate, more open-minded, and more connected people, right? Isn't that what it's all about? Being connected, having success ourselves, and having such an abundance of success that we can then contribute to the well-being of other people. And if enough people do this, we can actually change the world. As hokey as that sounds sometimes, something I actually believe. Let's all elevate our own ability to the point where we can take care of our own needs and those of others, and that all starts, of course, if you want to change the world, where does it start? You got to start with yourself. I think it's a Rumi quote, something like that. Point is, you can do it. So, thank you for joining me once again. If you're enjoying these videos, go ahead and click subscribe down below. Check out precisionprinciple.com. We got more information on all these topics there. And in the meantime, keep learning, keep growing, and have a great day.